Transitional justice tends to refer to responses to periods of conflict or authoritarian rule, and the ways that peace and justice, each of which might be further questioned in terms of their definition, are promoted through judicial and non-judicial measures. Trials, truth commissions, reparations programs, and institutional reforms are often the main focus of transitional justice. And in the mainstream, those have tended to focus on a fairly narrow set of human rights violations during a conflict or a period of authoritarian rule. Transformative justice, as it relates to transitional justice, emerged over the last 2 decades or so as kind of gaining ground as in some ways a critique and a response to the perceived gaps or limitations in transitional justice. In some of my work, and this is focused on to some degree in the chapter at least referred to, is talking about post-apartheid South Africa and the ways in which, although the Truth and Reconciliation Commission heard testimony about killings, torture, disappearances, and recommended reparations in some cases, the lived reality for the vast majority of people in terms of what apartheid meant on the ground isn't addressed through that mechanism. So the vast socioeconomic inequalities, which are of course highly racialized, are to a large extent still in place, and the crime of apartheid was not addressed in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, for instance. Part of the critique of transformative justice is that those injustices are also very important as motivating factors for conflicts, or as the fundamental issue about which a divide in a society has been based on. So even if it's not rejecting those kinds of mechanisms and those kinds of focuses on crimes like genocide or extrajudicial killings or torture, that something else is necessary if you're going to talk about repairing or moving towards repairing a society, repairing a divided society, repairing the harms of conflict or authoritarian rule, then it's necessary to look into other projects which might be more redistributionist in terms of access to land and housing, which is some of what I've talked about in my work, or gender justice, or a number of other areas that one might look at. And how this overlaps with democracy and development, if democracy is just a procedural issue around having elections and free and fair votes of equal franchise, then some of the more mainstream transitional justice approaches facilitate that. However, if democracy is going a little deeper than that and thinking about what it means to be able to participate fully in society and have the ability of affected communities to contest narratives or to contest programs and policies that might come from above, whether the government or intergovernmental organizations or international non-governmental organizations, then one might need to look at a more expansive question of grassroots or bottom-up participation. And this can overlap again with development when we talk about what it would mean to have development, what a developing or developed or more developed or less developed country or context or region might be. Greater human development and greater transformative justice go together quite well, whereas greater transformative justice and greater sort of narrowly defined development in terms of only economic growth and a market economy may well work against each other. My chapter kind of looks at these and suggests that there are ways in which narrowly defined development and narrowly defined transitional justice might overlap, but there are good reasons for being critical of both of those. And more expansive and more critical notions of transitional justice, and especially transformative justice, overlap also with more critical and more expansive notions of development. And there are good reasons for thinking that they are normatively and practically preferable to the narrowly defined and the perhaps mainstream and established versions of those. Although I also go on to argue that we shouldn't be moving to a point where they're simply synonymous, that transformative justice is development, is democracy. that each of these things do mean something distinct, and they might have particular areas of focus. Certainly, they shouldn't be completely amalgamated. One should not absorb the other, but there are ways in which they might become more synergistic and for more expansive and more critical notions of development and transitional justice, especially transformative justice, that is preferable for various reasons.